Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Jess, and thanks for the Bristol Photography Festival for inviting me. Yes, I'm going to show mostly sort of extracts from different series made over quite a long period, most of which have surfaced in book form. And the last time I was thinking, so when I was assembling these pictures, the last time I was invited to a book festival, I got a kind of reminder at the end that I didn't once mention books, and it was just so this kind of regurgitation of pictures. So I will sort of course, dip into the books a little bit more and process and showing recent work and extracts from new series and so on. But yeah, feel free, and I tried to encourage people to ask questions sort of during, whilst pictures are on the screen, and just so quite informal and quite two-way, and so feel free to ask questions. It's funny being on stage where Mick Artistic was last night. Is he here? No. Oh, okay. That was really good. Let's see. I thought I'd start with this picture, and it was funny at the time, but it's sort of, looking at you now, it all feels slightly less funny. I thought I'd put in my Bristol start to the slideshow. Yeah, God, I don't know quite how to start, but yeah, it's not chronological, the work that I'm showing today, and this sort of starts at a point where early on living in London, had a strong desire to make work there, found it really hard to kind of visually, aesthetically get my teeth into London because it's so visually noisy, very overwhelming. So I think my only kind of way in the mid-90s was to work and sort of explore very narrow subject parameters and then explore these in great depth. And so a lot of the earlier work that I'm showing now is very very descriptive, using photography's great descriptive strengths. And this is a series called Audio Portraits. So I'm just gonna, and it's portraits of members of the public listening to music, and the title for each photograph is the name of the track or the artist they were listening to. So this photograph is called Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits. Radiohead, Paranoid Android. Michael Jackson, Bad. And this is pre-MP3 and iPods. I think these pictures were made in between 98 and 2000 or 99 or something. These pictures did surface in a book. They were actually a chapter in a book. I made a book of photographs called Field Studies, which was made up of 8 separate bodies of work. Again, very narrow parameters and very day-to-day things that we all do and encounter. And one of the chapters was the audio portraits. This was The Field Mice, How Did You Learn to Kiss That Way? DMX, Rough Riders Anthem. Boyzone. Verdi, Hebrew Slave Song. And I think that, at this time this was, I don't know, just a kind of, it really satisfied that way of you responding to things that intrigued you or you're fascinated about, and just kind of immersing yourself. But of course these kind of comparative studies of variations of the same in a way. So I would leave my house or my studio already with things in my mind and looking for details. In this case, this is a series called Trolley Portraits, and it's members of the public pushing trolleys. And then I sort of got fascinated in the trolleys and where they were made, and only sort of looking back, you sometimes think, what was the initial spark or the catalyst for some of these series? And this I distinctly remember at the time, as a lot of photographers know, carrying so much equipment and tripods and cameras. I had a bad back and a slipped disc, and I was recommended to get a trolley by my doctor. So I think that's all I started to see everywhere. And I just like this idea of the sense of space, and often they're not tools for carrying things. It was a sense of kind of space or security, of course, as well as like walking aid. These photographs were also exhibited in a library of big glass windows, where a lot of the people walked past. This is another series within the same book called Day Return, pictures of people travelling between London, Liverpool Street and Southend on Sea. There's 38 pictures in this series, and the prints are quite small. I'll go quite fast because I've got so many pictures today. Again, another chapter within the book called Billboards, and this is a kind of, I don't know, almost like a discovery of photography's great ability of sort of turning things inside out, or refusing to accept things how they're presented to you versus how they are. So really, and I like photography's great ability of sort of peeling and lifting and sort of, and this was I suppose a response to the visual bombardment of advertising, and how this kind of visual noise now is so forced upon us. And so this response in a way was photographing the structures of billboards and advertising placards, but photographing them from behind. And then the title for each picture is the name of the ad, or the strapline of the ad that was on the front. So you're sort of denying the visual aid of the ad, but keeping the strapline. So it's just this kind of tension. So the title of this picture is, I think it's There's No Place Like a British Gas Home. This is L'Oreal Paris, Because You're Worth It. No need to keep the receipt, a diamond is forever. The Inland Revenue. Welcome to Marlborough Country, smoking when pregnant harms your baby. That was the sort of tail end of the cigarette ads in Britain, which I think was in 2003 or 2. Another chapter within field studies is Lost, and this is just sort of dances around that idea of when we're lost or trying to navigate our way in unfamiliar places, and that kind of awkward couple of minutes of how we use our bodies and how we turn our bodies in relation to these bits of paper, or how we choose who to ask, and then when they tell us directions, do we trust them? So that it was just this kind of, became fascinated in this sort of this gap, this kind of window of lostness. Of course, now again it's different. We rarely see printed bits of paper now. It's mostly phones, and usually I would ask people if I could take their picture or explain the nature of the series, but with this I didn't ask people. This was the first book that I published myself, and I decided to do that. In 2005, I made a photographic series called Invisible, and when I felt I really exhausted the series, I really wanted to make and assemble it in book form. So I financed it myself from money that I earned from editorial commissions, and this was the first book that I made. The series is called Invisible, and it's mostly pictures of sort of key workers and men and women in cities who do sort of jobs related to keeping a city ticking over, really, like telephone engineers, calibrating traffic lights, tree surgeons, and the idea behind it, I couldn't, and it sort of actually stemmed from making the Billboards series, because I was photographing the back of billboards and also cycling and wearing one of these bright jackets, and I wondered why nobody asked me what I was doing. Nobody said what, because you have to trespass to get in. And then I realised it was the jacket. So then I spoke to quite a few people, it's like, who work and wear these jackets. They're like, yeah, I mean, they sort of say those stories of queuing up and never getting served in cafes, or there was even stories of people walking into hotels, lifting up a piano, walking out, dressed in fluorescent clothes, and no one saw a thing, sort of thing. So I liked this idea and started to explore as these colours were sweeping across Europe and the world in the late 90s and early 2000s, as we all became obsessed with sort of health and safety. And I'm sort of showing it slightly out of chronological order, but I had a strong desire. I was also making a photographic series after Billboards in Hackney Wick in East London, close to where I was living at the time. And sorry, maybe I should get to the pictures first. And I started to make this photographic series, and it was the first time for a while where I wasn't sort of leaving my house or studio looking for subject matter that was sort of forming in my head. It was sort of stumbling across a place, being completely blown away, and kind of immediate engagement, and almost the place itself sort of carrying me. So my work sort of changed from this very kind of descriptive photographic studies to much looser looser series without sort of such tight, narrow conceptual parameters, but more broader geographical parameters. And I published this also, I think in 2005 or 6, and the pictures were made over a 3 or 4 year period. And it was very liberating for me, and I still feel this is really one of, almost this idea of, it was kind of like stepping back, and the place itself guiding and almost making the series itself, really, and just responding and being, I guess in a way it was a kind of escapism as well, just jumping on a bicycle, going to this place that it had a very strong pull. The pictures were taken on a camera that I sourced and bought from at this market, and then used that same camera to photograph where it was purchased from. There was a Sunday market which took place in an old Greyhound and Speedway stadium. And this work was exhibited also at the Photographers Gallery, I think in 2005 or 6. and it was quite interesting because I remember being told by the receptionist at the gallery that the question, the most common question that people asked when they saw the work was, where were these pictures taken? And I always think of that because it was kind of, it was like this, as we all know, sort of London is so full of sort of these pockets, and I think it took even quite a lot of Londoners by surprise that it was quite an extreme market, of course, just almost purely survival. Later it was announced that London would be a possible host for the Olympic Games when the bid was just being considered, and once that went through, the site of the market that you see now and much of the surrounding area were kind of completely deleted, and of course the market has since closed, and the stadium and different aspects of the games buildings were built on this site. I think I was visiting the market for years really, so I got to know quite a lot of people, and eventually put posters and invited people to the show, and a few people did turn up as I put posters about the Hackney Wick photography show, but it got slightly confusing because it was also around the time the market was closing, so people were turning up at the gallery to sell stuff, thinking that the market had moved there as well. But and whilst I was taking these pictures, I was also collecting objects and flowers and seeds and tiny little things, this kind of, which I would take back to my studio and press and dry flowers, and I was always thinking of not just using photography as this very descriptive tool, but thinking almost kind of trying to make these extractions, whether it's possible not just to photograph what a place looks like, but somehow try to capture the spirit and feeling of place. And this, I suppose as time has gone on now, I've really enjoyed doing that and really trying to deliberately have less control and just continue to take steps backwards and allow the subject to take a few steps forward. And I've attempted this in various ways, and we can get on to those later. Sorry, there's so many pictures, isn't there? This is a kind of mini book in the book. It's just paintings and details and objects that I picked up along the way. And this was printed on a very thin sort of Bible paper, and as a section within the book. And here's some of the examples of things that I was starting to source, which later led to what became Hackney Flowers, which I'll show in a second. And maybe I should say, but I forgot to say that, I mean, one of the things that was quite liberating about making this work, I think in the sort of early 2000s, I think photography was leaning so much towards kind of technique, and it was, or the kind of, the clarity and discussions around sort of megapixels and DPI, and it was so much emphasis on that, and I think this is probably why it was quite liberating to really kind of let go a little bit of that and really push the content to the forefront. And I like the idea that this kind of quite, there's enough information but not too much, and for me that felt a nice balance for this place and subject. Another attempt I had to sort of collaborate with place, if you like, was some of the C-type prints I was making in the area. I would also take back to the same parameters and bury them literally under the ground, leave prints there for anywhere between sort of a few days to a few weeks, and then go back and dig them up, and just this kind of desperate attempt to try and let the place itself kind of leave its mark. And again, the excitement, I suppose, because photography is so much about control, and it's this kind of working half blind and not knowing what the pictures are going to look like and what effect the earth and humidity has had on the prints was quite appealing. Sometimes they were buried face to face, so the emulsion of one print would leap onto the other, and other times like singly or back to back. And then when I made the books, this very small, almost like sort of ladybird book size, with a uncoated paper on the outside, I would then take the books themselves back and bury them and use the earth as ink. Yeah?
Was it compromised the longevity of the books?
I don't know. I think as far as I know, they're kind of on pause. If they're kept dry, I think if they get slightly humid again, it will probably resume the decay. But I think if they're dry, they're sort of on pause. Yeah, and the prints too. The prints, I've still got some of these prints, and they're kind of just stopped decaying, but I'm sure a bit of humidity would continue the decay. This is a book called Hackney Flowers. Again, pictures made between, I think, 2002 and 2000, and the book finally surfaced in 2007. And this was, again, this kind of extraction, but this time with a bit more sort of confusion of scale, and the pictures are slightly pulling in different directions, and I always saw this when I was making it as almost like this ringing out, almost kind of just trying to squeeze subject matter out of a place, and just this idea of trying to extract feeling of place. And so often I would, with some of the flowers and seeds, I would lay them on top of the C-type prints, often taken on the low quality Bakelite camera, and then re-photograph them on a kind of super high quality, more like a medical camera. So you've got this sort of confusion of scale and confusion of clarity of things made and extracted from a single part of London. I'll go a bit faster because I realised I've got so much more work that I thought I put a bit too many pictures. This is almost a continuation of this Hackney Wick obsession, which lasted for years and was almost impossible to kind of stop, and where you're so carried by place. And this book was kind of born out of the post chaos and intensity of the market and industry that existed. Then the announcements that London was granted the Olympic Games. There was a strange kind of limbo period of this kind of pre-construction, but post everything just starting to close down, so you could feel something enormous was in the air, something huge was about to happen. So there were so I tried to photograph these details and just because often photography deals so much with kind of suggestions of the past and decay and deterioration, and so I thought, of course it's not possible, but just to photograph things or dances around the idea of things that don't exist yet. So, for example, this picture's a compulsory purchase order buildings, and so you started to see surveyors and tiny little traces of paint and little clues. So it sort of loosely is around that. And the series is called Archaeology in Reverse. Sorry, I'm going so fast. I should try to get to some. I think in 2008, as I mentioned, this kind of obsession with place, really trying to just kind of bring this to an end, really, where I just completely carried by Hackney Wick, and this body of work was almost born out of trying to slow down and bring this obsession to an end. And I bought in 2008 these ex-library books from Hackney Library, and then kind of used them to as a shell to house new work, and I used my letterpress machine, and hand C-type prints were stuck into each book. And since one of the key tools to make my pictures at this time, and even today, I use a bicycle a lot, and so at the end I remember, and you'll see I think shortly, I put ink on the wheels of my bicycle and just laid all of the books around a very long corridor. I just cycled all over the book, so the bike itself creeps into the book at some point. Yeah. 2008. Yeah. Sorry, it's jumping a bit all over the place. This is a newspaper of a series I made in August 2011, was it? Yeah, already, in response to the London riots that took place, and I had a strong urge to make and respond visually, but didn't quite know how to articulate that. Of course, not wanting to photograph the riots themselves, so I sourced rocks and stones that were thrown at the shops and the police, and took them back to my studio and photographed them. And then made a newspaper which was free. This is a new series that's just surfaced as a book, and they're pictures made between 2009 and 2013. It's called Talking to Ants, and it predates the Outside In series that I made as part of the Brighton Festival in 2010. And it's working with this idea again of another attempt of kind of extraction, but this time, rather than laying objects on top of a print or burying pictures, this time I decided to somehow try and embed the details within the images, and the way I tried to do this was actually scooping up tiny little things and dropping them inside the camera, so you can see sort of tiny details or insects or semi-silhouettes of objects that were sitting on the film emulsion in the camera as the shutter sort of opens and closes. So again, you have this slight confusion of scale, but another attempt to sort of somehow, is it possible to photograph what can they sort of hold the sort of spirit of place or emit the feeling of place? And all of these photographs were taken in East London.
Stephen, can I ask,
Yeah.
did it work the first time, or did you have to?
Yeah, I had to do a lot of experimenting. I think the first initial hurdle was because I use 6x6 film cameras, which you hold at your waist. The film plane sort of is heading, so I had to somehow I had to figure out a way where the film plane was horizontal, so the objects didn't slide off the film. So I made a kind of kaleidoscope type mirror device, and then it was kind of quite instant where the objects, of course you're kind of working half blind because you have no idea where the objects are sitting on the film, and you're also forced to take 12 pictures with the same camera contents. So between frames I would often tilt the camera, advance it to the next frame, sort of shake it if there wasn't too many living creatures in it, and then and re-photograph. Yeah, so it's kind of, I just love, for me it was again so exciting. It's a kind of, yeah, I just really like this idea of where your intentions collide with chance. That point in the middle somewhere can be exciting. But yeah, of course, these pictures were then edited and selected from many pictures, so mostly it would be considered as a failure, and I really struggled with this. I really was stuck for a couple of years. I just couldn't. It was really stuck. Yeah, Often the objects were sourced at the foot of where the pictures were taken, but not always. And I would start to see sort of semi-translucent, deep objects. It's strange, even though the chance plays such a big role. It's funny how you start to understand how it will work, and you begin to you can lean the pictures in. And you start to see them, even though you can't see them, and based on what you're photographing and the ingredients in the camera. And for example, this portrait is a lady that I met on a busy shopping street, and I made her portrait there on a colour transparency film, then processed the film, cut out the portrait, and took it to the scene of the canals. That semi-translucent or crystallised, what looks like plastic, is sap from the trees in the background, which curled in a very nice way.
You have to be really organised then.
Y-
landscape where you put stuff
Yeah.
what picture it's related to.
Yeah, even though I didn't have really strict rules. It didn't have to be from the parameters of where the pictures were taken. The parameters qualified if it was East London, but I wasn't always that strict at, and I would often have little tubs with me in my bag, so I would pick things up as I was going. This is another new series that I've just published as a book, and this again is a kind of attempt. For years I had a strong desire to make a photographic response to these high caffeine, high energy drinks, and often you have a desire to make work, but you don't know how you're going to articulate it, and so yeah, and I like the series of disappointments, which I'll show later. It was kind of having an idea, but really searching for a way of kind of articulating that, and I decided to, in this case, again, the subject isn't in front of the camera, but the subject being these energy drinks, almost like we're not allowed to be tired anymore. The sale of energy drinks have rocketed. Supermarkets are sort of dedicating entire aisles to supermarkets now, kids, and so it's kind of, I think, the consumption of, and it was a kind of reaction of a response to energy drinks, really. And these were all taken on film, but the final bath I would soak and leave the images, the negatives in energy drink at higher temperature to accelerate the decay. So the sugar and the caffeine would sort of eat into the film emulsion. The title for each picture is the name of the drink, which I can't actually read. Has anyone got a copy of the book here? I could maybe. No, yeah, sorry, I can't read. Maybe. Yeah, I can read it here. So this is a drink called React. But of course, the titles aren't key and don't necessarily complement the pictures. But for me, they were vital, of course, because of my interest in documentation and being strict with image and in this case, what I felt was a key title. This one's called, the one on the left is Blue Bolt and Pink Bolt. I think Pink Bolt's sugar-free. It's like Sainsbury's own energy drink. So what happens is the emulsion softens, and the layers of the film, the yellow, magenta, cyan, you sort of peel away or blister and tear, and with like a soft brush, like a makeup brush or something, or just gently just peel away the layers. So there's kind of manual intervention as well. But so they're quite harsh, and this is called Organic Energy Emerge. So it's again just trying to photograph somehow the intensity of modern inner city life and the noise, but using something which plays and creeps into our lives in such a big way. No, the pictures were taken all in East London. When I was making this series, a lot of the pictures I was choosing were landscapes, and I started to have a strong, it really felt like the human element was missing. So it's kind of, it's both human and sort of landscapes and details. Again, the only parameters for this were the pictures were taken in East London, and all the drinks were sourced there. This drink's called Manpower on the left and Pure Rush on the right. Little Miracles and Pussy. The picture on the right is a friend's band called 100% Beefcock. It's an all-female punk band, and so that I would go to their rehearsals, and so I just like this idea of course it's impossible to have the audio element in a picture book, but this kind of I tried to kind of get the intensity of almost trying to grasp the audio, not just the visual noise, but the audio. So that occasionally you'll see this band appearing in the book as almost like to have this kind of knitted in soundtrack.
Do you get frustrated with the limitation of the final realisation through the 2D, because you're drawing on so many things?
Yeah.
Very performative, and then you end up with a 2D thing. Do you find that something that is a limitation that you...
Not really. I think because the process, I think I enjoy process so much. I think often this is just the kind of end of a long journey, or yeah, I don't really. What do you mean? See the final thing as a kind of anti-climax, or?
Yeah, because there's so many things you're drawing on to make something very emotional, but
Yeah.
you're connecting out
Yeah.
lots of different senses, and then
Yeah.
the
No, I
result
know
is
what
a
you
2D
mean.
thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think often when you look at or you make work or you look at work that you enjoy, you really feel that all of that pouring in, and then I think perhaps it all, I don't know because I know the work so well now, but hopefully when it all comes sort of flowing back out again when the book is opened, and yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry? Some of the same energy drinks, yeah. I would use, I would have kind of, you actually can see with this picture, I would have the tablecloth, and then you had to be very careful when you're doing this because the emulsion is so soft that it sometimes just slips off and just you see the image go down the sink. So and I think I love that because it's kind of, and I like the idea of destroying what could be some of your favourite images, but it's something very exciting about that as well. And I deliberately didn't pre-scan anything first. So if the picture was gone, it was gone. And it's kind of like, felt a little bit like tightrope walking, but without a safety net, I think that was key to, and I did use. Yeah, often, by lots of cans of the same drink and line them up and then process, say, 12 images or 20 or more in that same type of drink. And then each frame was numbered in relation to the drink, and then they were selected at the end purely for aesthetics rather than making sure I had every drink. So occasionally, you do see like a few Red Bulls or a few, And I think I'll continue. I just really like this way of course, not undermining photography's great descriptive strengths, and I really would never do that. But I also enjoy this idea of kind of somehow going in the back door and somehow trying to not just use the subject matter isn't in front of the lens. You can even somehow use the subject to help you make the pictures. And by doing so, weirdly, you may have a kind of a feeling of what the subject is from what it leaves. Or Yeah.
Were you drinking the drinks yourself?
I tried a few, like quite a few. I had a sip, but no, I don't drink them. Yeah. I tried one called the Bedroom Bully, and I tried one called Hard Drive, and I tried one called Pure Rush, and a couple, yeah. It's quite nice colours. Monster. Yeah, no, it's actually funny you say that, because it's bizarre this is about energy drinks, because it nearly killed me, this series, because what I didn't know is when you mix sugary drinks with film emulsion and heat it, the fumes that are given off are absolutely awful. And I spent like 4 months doing this, and I would get to my studio at like 4 in the morning and start doing it, and I didn't quite realise and I had the window open, but I didn't wear masks or anything. And it really nearly, and I thought it was ironic that I was called the series Best Before End, because I honestly thought it was going to finish me off. I was so sick, I had to go and have like X-ray and lung. I had really short breath for quite a while. It was so, it's just weird. When I look at this series, I have mixed feelings, because it was a bit silly to do as well. Yeah.
I liked a lot that in the beginning you say something about these energy drinks, that they popped up everywhere, and that it almost feels that in society you cannot rest anymore or something.
Yeah.
And in other projects like the market are really conceptual, but why did you decide here then not to relate your photographs? You
Yeah.
just say the parameters are East London.
Yeah.
Not more to that first thing you said, because
Yeah.
that's also I find that really interesting what you say. And then in the images you don't really find that back anymore.
Yeah, I just didn't feel the need to kind of point and steer the viewer. I just really like this kind of, it's embedded in, and it's kind of saturated in inner city life, but I didn't want to show cans, I didn't want to show people drinking the stuff, or I just wanted it to kind of somehow mirror the kind of intense kind of chaos of inner city life. And yeah, I didn't really want to steer it that far, but just kind of step back. It's still a sort of more of a broader study, and I wanted to try and make the pictures feel like it, but not describe it directly. Yeah. Am I doing okay for time? Because I should maybe speed up a bit.
Everyone's kind of, there's like a very gentle stillness. I don't really want to interrupt, but we've got, if anyone wants to ask a question, I'd say ask your question, and we'll sort of draw it to a close in like 5 minutes. And then,
okay.
So don't hold back, ask. Okay?
Yeah.
Your books are really beautiful. There's one upstairs. Could you tell us a bit more about self-publishing and the reasons for why you did it, and pointers on the way forward?
Yeah, sure. I think the reasons for self-publishing was quite instant to me when I worked with a publisher in 2004, and also looking at a lot of books, and sometimes you see a book and you feel somehow the content doesn't fully marry with the production or the feel or the size or the choices, and I just felt ashamed, that idea of just stopping short. And you've used so much energy to make work, and even though I tried to keep the two parts of my practice very, very separate, I mean, the work is everything, and I don't try and overlap them. I think I really think of just the work, really, but I do feel there's a point where I love, when I do start assembling books and thinking about making books, is this idea of assembling the book with, if you can, in the same frame of mind that if you can tune into that as when you made the work. So it's a kind of continuation, or maybe what goes through your eyes you can translate into your fingers as well, based on the materials you choose and the inks and so on. I mean, with this series coming up for air, which is very much a sort of frame of mind, and it's actually pictures taken in Japan, but it's not. I can't really say it's about Japan. It's probably more as a response to my chaotic life in London during that time, where when I made the jackets, I tried to hand paint the jackets in the same frame of mind when I made the work, and I've used ink that was used to print the pictures inside, the same ink to then make the jackets. And so I love this kind of man versus machine, thinking, okay, we can do things in volume by hand, and even though I'll probably never do anything like this again, because I painted like 4,000 jackets in hand, and it's so stupid because it took like 7 days and 7 nights, and the fumes again were not too good, but I would encourage, and I just think it's so nice to, if you spend time and energy making work, and to assemble your work in a book, and there's many ways of doing it, as you know, and so I would encourage you, and I think as people probably here know that, you know, it's a nice way also for your work to surface, and it allows you to move on as well. And my problem is I rarely look backwards. I keep looking forwards and looking forwards, but it's a good way, rather than having lots of unfinished work. It's a good way to close and finish these obsessions that you feel you exhaust, or they exhaust you.
I've got a question over here.
Yeah.
So the early part of your work is relatively distinct from the later part, in terms of how it's made and so on. And what I'm curious about is whether the audience for your work, whether you think the audience is the same, whether it's followed you on your journey through your career, or whether you think it's changed.
Good question. I don't know. I really don't know. I think the thing is, I suppose I never really make work, and I'm sure nobody does, but with an audience in mind. So I just really make what I feel compelled to do, and I think a lot of people, because I have a small online bookshop that I run with my friend Richard, who's here. We, like a lot of people that bought books in the early mid-2000s, are still buying books today, but I really don't know how. And of course, the books tend to surface in different places, and some like more abstract work tends to surface maybe in art museums and stuff, and the more descriptive pictures and books surface more in photographic related shops and institutes. But yeah,
We're going to sort of draw it towards a close.
Yeah.
If there's something that you'd like to leave us with.
I can't think of any more
Put you on the
questions.
spot now.
Yeah, I could flick through a few more if you want. Or... Pardon? Oh, the books are upstairs.
Yeah, you're going to be signing books
Yeah.
upstairs, is that right?
Yeah.
You're signing books
Yeah.
after, so
Yeah.
is there a lasting thing you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I just flicked through a few of these. This is pictures. Oh no, I'll stop there. Let's stop, yeah.
I'm sure it's impossible to